The car was already moving. His wife stood at the window, hands still, face still, watching the black vehicle disappear down the road that led to the airport. He had not looked back. She told herself, "This is normal. This is business. This is the man I married." But somewhere in the house, on the edge of the kitchen table, sat an envelope. Cream-colored, sealed, with a name on the front that was not hers. It had fallen from the assistant's bag the night before. No one had noticed. No one, except the house itself. 3 minutes after the car vanished, the wife opened the letter, and the world she had built for 11 years collapsed in silence. What was inside that letter? That a powerful Korean man would rather board a plane than let his own wife read. There are families that build their names in stone, and there are families that build their names in bone, in discipline, in sacrifice, in the unspoken agreement that the individual bends so the lineage may stand tall. The Yoon family was the second kind. For 4 generations, the Yoon name had meant something in the world of import and trade. They had survived wars, currency collapses, and the particular brutality of rising too fast in a world that does not forgive ambition. They survived because they followed the code, an internal law, older than any contract, that said, the family comes first. Always, without exception. Halmoni Bok Rai was the last living keeper of that code. She was 81 years old, and she moved through the family estate in Busan like a woman who had already made peace with every hard thing the world could offer. Her hands were weathered, her eyes, still sharp, still watching. She spoke rarely, and when she did, even Kang Wu went quiet. She had raised him herself after his father's early death. She had shaped him the way a river shapes stone, slowly, patiently, with pressure that never relents. She had taught him the rules of the Yoon bloodline with the same seriousness another grandmother might reserve for prayer. The heir must be known, she had told him when he was 15. A son who hides his heir is a man who has already betrayed his ancestors. Kang Wu had nodded. He had always nodded, but nodding and obeying are not the same thing. Halmoni Bok Rai knew this. She had learned it from her own husband decades ago, and the lesson had cost her greatly. Now Kang Wu was 43, the head of Yoon International. A man with a beautiful Korean wife named Sarah, elegant, educated, raised in a family nearly as respected as the Yoons. Their marriage had been celebrated. Their union had been called perfect by people who did not live inside it. They had been trying for a child for 6 years. 6 years of quiet hope and quieter disappointment. Of medical appointments that Kang Wu attended less and less. Of a distance between them that grew wider with every missed dinner, every business trip. Every night he returned smelling of cologne that seemed too fresh for a man who had only been to meetings. Sarah said nothing. She was trained in the art of patience. She arranged flowers. She hosted dinners. She wore the face the Yoon family required of her. And Halmoni Bok Rai watched. She had noticed Zuri the first time Kang Wu brought her to the estate for a family strategy meeting 8 months ago. A composed woman. Young, but not frivolous. African. A detail that surprised no one more than Halmoni herself, who had lived long enough to know that significant things always arrive from unexpected directions. Zuri had greeted the elder with a respectful bow, quiet and unhurried. Halmoni Bok Rai had looked at her for a long moment, the kind of look that does not evaluate beauty, but character. She had said nothing then, but that night, alone in her room, she had lit a single stick of incense and spoken softly to the photograph of her late husband on the shelf. "Something is already in motion," she had said. "I can feel it moving beneath the surface, like water under ice." The incense burned slowly. No one answered, but the smoke curled in a direction that made the old woman's eyes narrow. By the time the season changed, Kang Wu was traveling more. The trips grew longer. The explanations grew shorter. And Zuri's name began to appear in his sentences the way a thread begins to unravel a cloth, gradually, and then all at once. Zuri handled the Singapore contract. Zuri reorganized the logistics chain. Zuri will accompany me to the conference. Sarah smiled at every mention. She was practiced at smiling. Halmoni Bakrai did not smile. She simply catalogued, filed it away in the ancient archive of her memory, alongside every other thing that mattered. And then came the morning that Kang Wu stood at the front door with his luggage and turned to Sarah and said, "Don't come to the airport. I'll take my assistant. It's more efficient." Sarah blinked, just once. "Of course," she said. Halmoni Bakrai was standing at the top of the staircase. She heard every word. She watched Kang Wu leave without looking back, the way men leave when they are certain they will return before the damage is discovered. She descended the stairs slowly, stood beside her granddaughter-in-law, who was still watching the empty driveway. The old woman placed one hand briefly on Sarah's shoulder, said nothing, and then she went to make tea, because some truths can only be received after the body has been given something warm to hold. A house with too many closed doors does not fall from the outside. It collapses from within, quietly, and with no warning to those still sleeping inside. No one arrives without a reason. Even those who seem to drift in on chance, on a job posting, on a recommendation, on the wind. We're always moving toward something, guided by forces they may not have named. Zuri had arrived in Seoul 2 years ago with a master's degree in international business, 3 languages, and the particular kind of ambition that does not announce itself. She was from Accra, the daughter of a diplomat father and a schoolteacher mother, raised in a world where presentation and precision were considered forms of survival. She had not come looking for Kang Wu Yun. She had come for the position. Assistant to the director of Yun International, posted on a corporate recruitment board. She had applied the way she did everything, methodically, thoroughly, without attachment to the outcome. She was hired within a week of her interview. The other employees watched her with curiosity. A black woman in a Korean corporate house was not invisible. She was simply new territory, and people who encounter new territory either explore it or retreat from it. Most retreated. Zuri did not require their comfort. Kang Wu, to his credit, had treated her with professional respect from the beginning. He was precise with instructions, fair with feedback. He did not speak to her differently than he spoke to any other member of his team. But Kang Wu was also a man who noticed things. He noticed efficiency the way some men notice beauty, with a hunger he rarely acknowledged. And Zuri was extraordinarily efficient. Within 3 months, she had restructured 2 failing distribution agreements and identified a contract loophole that saved the company 6 million won in penalties. Kang Wu promoted her without ceremony. He simply called her into his office one morning and said, "Your responsibilities are expanding. Adjust accordingly." She had nodded. Understood. That was the beginning. What grew between them afterward was not born in a dramatic moment. There was no single night, no single confession. It grew the way ivy grows, slowly, along the surface of daily proximity, of long hours and shared problems, and the particular intimacy of 2 people who trust each other's minds before anything else. By the time either of them might have named it, it had already grown past the point of easy removal. And by the time Sarah had begun to notice the frequency of Zuri's name on her husband's lips, it was already too late for the truth to be simple. What Sarah did not know, what she could not have known from the careful distance she had been kept at, was that Zuri had come to Kang Wu's office 3 months prior, with something that changed everything between them permanently. She had sat across from his desk, set a manila folder on the surface, and said, in her calm, unshakable voice, "Before this goes any further, you need to know what this is, and you need to decide what you are going to do about it." Inside the folder, medical confirmation, a life, a new life, an heir that Kang Wu had not planned for, had not announced, had not, in the tradition of his family, acknowledged before the world. Kang Wu had stared at the document for a long time. Then he had looked at Zuri, and what passed across his face was not anger, not panic, not even guilt. It was something far more complicated. It was a man recognizing that the future had arrived before he was ready to receive it. He had made a choice that day, but it was the kind of choice that does not resolve anything. It only delays the reckoning. He asked Zuri to be patient, to wait, to trust him. And Zuri, who had not survived her life by being naive, had agreed. Not from weakness, from strategy. She understood that a secret kept by one person is a vulnerability. A secret kept by two is a negotiation. And she intended to be on equal ground when the negotiation reached its conclusion. So she continued to work, to appear professional, to accompany him to conferences and airports and long flights to Singapore and Frankfurt and back again, carrying within her something the Yoon family did not yet know existed. The letter had not been intentional. She had written it one night. A private document, a thing written to organize her own thoughts, her own fears, her own demands. She had placed it in her portfolio folder without thinking, meaning to return home with it, meaning to keep it where only she could reach it. She had not meant to leave it on the kitchen table of the Yoon family home. Some things, however, do not wait to be found. They find their own way. The seed that falls in secret does not ask the soil for permission. It simply grows. And one morning, without warning, it breaks through the surface. The letter was 3 pages long. Sarah read it once, standing in the kitchen, still in her morning dress, one hand braced against the counter as though the floor had shifted beneath her feet. Then she sat down and read it again, slowly this time, the way you read something when the first reading cannot possibly be accurate. But it was accurate. Every line. Zuri had not written it as a confession. She had written it as a record, precise, detailed, unemotional in the way that people are unemotional when they are actually very frightened and hiding it behind language. The letter documented the timeline. When she had discovered she was pregnant, when she had told Kang Wu, what he had said, what he had promised, what he had asked her to keep silent, and for how long. 7 months. For 7 months, Kang Wu had known he was going to be a father. And he had said nothing to his wife, nothing to his grandmother, nothing to the family that measured its identity by the continuation of its blood. He had hidden an heir, not from shame, that perhaps Sarah might have understood, not from cruelty, but from the particular cowardice of a man who believes that if he simply controls the timing of a truth, he can also control its impact. He could not. The child, a boy according to the letter, had been born 6 weeks ago, quietly, in a private clinic on the outskirts of Seoul, registered under Zuri's name alone, with no Yoon affiliation on any document. Kang Wu had been present at the birth. He had held the child. And then he had driven home to the family estate and sat at the dinner table and asked Sarah how her day had been. Sarah set the letter down on the table. She did not cry immediately. There is a kind of grief that is too large for tears. It simply fills the entire body until there is no space left for anything else. She sat in the silence of the kitchen for a very long time. It was Halmoni Bokrai who found her there. The old woman had come down for her morning tea and found her granddaughter-in-law sitting motionless, the pages of the letter spread on the table like evidence at a trial. Halmoni did not ask what had happened. She looked at the pages. She looked at Sarah's face, and the deep, ancient knowledge in her eyes settled into something that was not quite sadness and not quite resolution, but something between the two. She sat down across from Sarah. She picked up the letter. She read it. Not quickly. Not slowly. At the pace of someone who has already suspected and is simply confirming. When she finished, she set the pages down carefully, folded her hands on the table, looked at the wall for a moment, as though consulting something invisible. Then she said, "The child exists. Not a question, a statement, an acknowledgement that the world had already changed, regardless of what any of them did next." Sarah finally looked at her. "He hid it from everyone." "Yes," said Halmoni Bokrai. "He hid it from everyone." Her voice was measured. Whatever she felt about Kang Wu's choices was not a thing she would allow to become noise right now. There would be time for that. What the moment required was clarity. "What will you do?" Sarah asked. The old woman was quiet for a long time. "The question," Halmoni Bokrai finally said, "is not what I will do. The question is what the truth requires of all of us now." She rose from the table, moved to the window. Outside, the garden was still and gray in the early morning light. A garden she had tended for 40 years, that had outlasted marriages and mournings and the slow revolution of everything she thought she knew. "There is a child," she said quietly. Not to Sarah, perhaps to no one but herself. A Yun child. Whether my grandson had the courage to name it or not. The blood does not wait for his permission. She turned from the window. Her voice, when she spoke again, was the voice that ended discussions. "Call him. Tell him to come home. Now." Sarah reached for her phone with steady hands, steadier than they had any right to be. She had been trained for composure. She had spent 11 years becoming excellent at it. But her eyes, as she dialed, told a different story entirely. Somewhere across the city, heading toward an airport departure gate, Kang Wu's phone began to ring. He looked at the screen. He saw his wife's name. He hesitated. The hesitation of a man whose carefully constructed timeline has just developed a crack he cannot yet see the size of. He answered. "Sarah." Her voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. "Come home, Kang Wu." A pause. "I'm about to board." "Come home," she said again. "Halmoni is asking for you." Another pause. Longer. And in that pause, he understood. Not everything, but enough. The airport doors slid open around him. Travelers moved past on all sides, indifferent and hurried.
Before you continue, if this story touched something in you, you should know this is only the beginning. The complete version includes 30 full audio stories, more than 30 hours of uninterrupted listening. No ads, no cuts, no distractions. Scan the QR code on your screen, or tap the link in the pinned comment to continue listening right now.
He stood very still in the middle of all that motion, a powerful man, surrounded by departures, realizing that the one thing he had been trying to outrun had already arrived before him. A man who runs from the fire he himself started will find, when he finally stops running, that the fire has been following him the entire way. He came home, not running. Kang Wu Yun did not run, but he came, with the particular walk of a man who has rehearsed his explanation on the drive back and already knows, in the deepest part of himself, that no explanation will be sufficient. The family estate was quiet when he arrived. The kind of quiet that is not peaceful. The kind that has been deliberately arranged, the way a room is arranged before a difficult conversation. Sarah was in the sitting room. Halmoni Bokrai was beside her. The letter was on the table between them. Kang Wu stood in the doorway for a moment. He looked at the letter. He looked at his grandmother. He looked at his wife. And then he did something that surprised them both. He did not attempt to explain first. He simply sat down, across from them, and waited, as though he understood that the first words in this room did not belong to him. Halmoni Bokrai let the silence stand for a long time. She was in no hurry. She had waited 81 years to understand certain things, and she knew that silence applied correctly was more devastating than any accusation. Finally, she spoke. "You have a son." Kang Wu held her gaze. "Yes. 6 weeks old. Yes. And you chose to hide him." The word chose landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. He felt the ripple of it. "I was managing the timing," he said. Halmoni Bokrai's expression did not change, but something in her eyes sharpened, the way a blade sharpens when drawn across stone. Slow, precise, and final. "Managing the timing," she repeated, quietly. The way people repeat things they wish to make sure they have heard correctly, because they cannot yet believe what they have heard. "Halmoni, you hid an heir of this family," she said. Her voice had not risen. It never rose. It simply became more absolute. "You hid a Yun child as though he were something to be ashamed of, as though he were a problem to be solved at your convenience, as though the blood of this lineage answers to your schedule." Kang Wu said nothing. "In 60 years, she continued, I have seen this family survive things that would have ended lesser bloodlines. I have buried a husband. I have buried a son. I have carried this name through seasons that had no mercy. And you whom I raised, chose to hide the continuation of all of that. The room absorbed her words. Sarah had not spoken yet. She was watching Kang Wu with eyes that had moved past anger and arrived somewhere colder and more durable. Clarity, perhaps. The particular clarity that comes when the last illusion has finally been removed, and the shape of the truth becomes visible. "I need to understand one thing," Sarah said. Her voice was level. "Is it love?" Kang Wu looked at her. "Between you and Zuri, is it love? Or was it simply something that happened?" The question was not asked in jealousy. It was asked because the answer would determine everything that came next. And Sarah, whatever she was not a woman who made decisions without accurate information. Kang Wu was quiet for a long time. "It is not something I can reduce to a simple answer," he said at last. "Try," she said. He exhaled slowly. "There is a child. That child deserves a father who does not speak of his mother in convenient terms." It was not an answer, but it was honest. And in its honesty, it was its own kind of answer. Sarah nodded once. The way someone nods when they have received the confirmation they already expected, and were simply waiting for the other person to find the courage to provide. What followed were days of difficulty. Word moved through the extended Yun family with the speed that family secrets always travel, faster than intended, further than permitted. Cousins called. Uncles sent intermediaries. 2 board members of Yun International made inquiries that were professional on the surface and deeply personal in their subtext. A hidden heir, an African woman, a marriage fractured at its foundation. These were not small things in a family that measured its identity by its image. There were those in the extended clan who spoke about Zuri in ways that revealed what they truly feared. Not scandal, but change. Not the child, but what the child represented. A future that looked different from the past they had spent generations maintaining. Halmoni Bakrai received 3 calls from family elders in a single afternoon. She listened to each one with patience. Let them speak. Let them exhaust their concerns. And then she said, to each of them, with the same quiet finality, "The child is a Yun. The matter is closed." She did not explain. She did not debate. She replaced the phone and returned to her tea. Because this was the thing they did not understand. The thing that Kang Wu, in his fear, had failed to trust. Halmoni Bakrai had not survived 81 years by protecting only what was comfortable. She had survived by protecting what was true. And the truth was, there was a Yun child in the world, unacknowledged, unnamed within the family record. And that, regardless of the complicated circumstances of his arrival, was the greater wound, the greater dishonor. She sent a car to Zuri that same evening. Not a threatening gesture, not a summons, a car, with a note written in her own hand, in careful measured lines. "Bring the child. Come to tea. There is nothing here to fear." Zuri received the note at the small apartment she had moved to after the letter was discovered. She read it twice. Looked at her son sleeping in the crib beside her. 6 weeks old, breathing with the perfect unhurried rhythm of someone who does not yet know that the world is complicated. She thought about refusing. She had every reason to refuse. But she had read enough about Halmoni Bakrai from the edges of her 2 years at Yun International to know that this woman was not her enemy. And Zuri had not survived her own life by refusing the hands that were offered without malice. She arrived the next morning, with her son. When 2 storms meet at the same sky, it is not the loudest one that wins. It is the one that knows which direction the wind is already moving. There are moments that define a man not by what he achieves, but by what he faces. Kang Wu Yun had spent his life building. He had built a company, a reputation, a marriage, an image of himself that he could stand behind at any function, in any room, on any continent. He had been disciplined and strategic and controlled. And in one 7-month window of avoidance, he had placed all of it at risk. Not because of the child, not because of Zuri, but because of the choice to hide rather than to declare. This was the lesson Halmoni Bakrai intended him to learn. Not through punishment, through confrontation with himself. She arranged for Kang Wu to be present the morning Zuri arrived. He had not expected this. When he came down the stairs and found Zuri sitting in the main room, composed, upright, his son resting against her chest with the easy trust that newborns extend to the one person they already know completely, something moved through him that he did not have a word for. It was not guilt alone. Guilt he had been carrying for months and had learned to organize around it. This was different. This was the specific pain of seeing, in one frame, everything you failed to protect properly, and realizing the failure was entirely yours. Halmoni Bakrai was seated across from Zuri. The two women had been talking, quietly, deliberately, for several minutes before Kang Wu appeared. He did not know what had been said. He would never fully know. But something in the room's atmosphere had shifted into a strange, tentative equilibrium. He looked at Zuri. She looked at him, not with anger, not with warmth, with assessment. The look of a woman who is deciding, in real time, whether the person across from her deserves the next chapter of her patience. "Sit down, Kang Wu," said Halmoni Bakrai. He sat. She spoke then, not at length, not with dramatics. She spoke the way she always spoke, as someone who has already decided the truth and is simply taking the time to make sure everyone else in the room arrives at it as well. She said, "You made a choice to manage this situation rather than face it. You believed that control was the same as wisdom. It is not. Control keeps things hidden. Wisdom decides what must be brought into the light, and when." She looked at him steadily. "This child, your son, has existed in the world for 6 weeks without his father's name, without acknowledgement, without the protection of this family's word. In our tradition, that is not a delay. That is an abandonment. And I will not have a Yun child abandoned." Kang Wu had his hands clasped on his knees. He was listening the way he had listened to her when he was 15, completely, without defense. "You will correct this," she said. "Not for the family name, not for the board, for him." She nodded toward the child. "A boy who grows up knowing his father acknowledged him. That boy becomes a different kind of man than one who does not. You know this. I made sure you knew this." He nodded. Slowly. Then Halmoni Bakrai did something unexpected. She turned to Zuri. "And you," she said, not unkindly, "are not without responsibility in this room. You are a woman of intelligence. You knew what this silence was costing. You chose strategy over declaration. And I understand why. The world has given women like you every reason to move carefully." Zuri held the elder's gaze without flinching. "But this child needs more than strategy," said Halmoni Bakrai. "He needs a world, a full world, which means the people who created him must stop managing each other and begin building something for him instead." A long silence. Then Zuri said quietly, "I never asked to be hidden. I asked to be given time to understand who I was dealing with. And now you know," said the old woman. "Now I know," Zuri agreed. It was not forgiveness in that room. It was not resolution. It was something earlier than those things. Something that has to come before forgiveness can be built. The honest accounting of what had actually happened, spoken aloud, by all the people it had happened to. Sarah was not present in that meeting. That was also Halmoni Bakrai's decision, deliberate, considered. Sarah's process was her own, and it would not be rushed or managed by anyone else's timeline. But that evening, Kang Wu knocked on the door of the room where Sarah had been sleeping alone for 4 days. She opened it. He did not have a speech. He had thought about preparing one, and then understood that a man who had already spoken too carefully for too long needed perhaps to speak simply. "I failed you," he said. "Not because of Zuri. Not because of the child. I failed you the moment I decided that you could not handle the truth, that my managing it was better than your knowing it. I made myself the protector of a lie I called timing, and I left you standing at a window watching a car you should have been in." Sarah looked at him for a long time. "Yes," she said. "You did." She did not open the door wider, but she did not close it either. "I don't know what we are now," she said. "Neither do I," he said. "But I'm not leaving the house to figure it out." Another long moment. She stepped back from the door. Not an invitation, but not a refusal. He walked in. Two people at the edge of an enormous decision, choosing, for one night at least, to remain in the same room. Halmoni Bakrai, passing the hallway on her way to her room, paused outside the closed door. She did not knock. She did not speak. She simply placed one hand briefly against the wood, then moved on. A man who kneels before the truth he has avoided does not lose his dignity. He recovers it. But only if he kneels before the right person, himself. Peace in a family like the Yuns is never loud. It does not arrive with celebration. It settles slowly, the way light settles at the end of a long day. Not dramatic, not sudden, but undeniable once it is there. 6 months passed. The child, Kang Wu's son, was given a name. A Korean name, chosen by Halmoni Bakrai, as was her right as family elder, Jiwon, he who protects wisdom, a name that carried weight without apology. Zuri had agreed to the name with a small, private smile, the kind that said she understood what the gesture meant, and had decided to receive it as it was intended. Jiwon Yun was recorded in the family register, formally, without footnotes, without asterisks, without the kind of careful language that says one thing while meaning another. His name sat in the Yun family record beside the names of those who had come before him, in a lineage that had survived 4 generations of difficulty. Halmoni Bakrai had overseen the recording personally. She had held the pen out to Kang Wu and watched him write the name in the register herself, not delegating it, not having it handled by an administrator, doing it with his own hand. Because some acts of acknowledgement cannot be done by proxy. When it was done, she had said nothing. Simply taken the register, closed it, and returned it to its place on the shelf. That was enough. Kang Wu and Sarah did not return to what they had been. What they had been was already gone. Gently, irreversibly, in the way that certain things end not through violence but through the quiet accumulation of truth. They had spent a number of difficult weeks in conversations that were sometimes painful and sometimes unexpectedly honest. And they had arrived at a decision that surprised no one who truly knew them. They would separate, with dignity, without warfare, without using the family name as a weapon against each other. Sarah had resources of her own, education, intelligence, a family name that did not require the Yun connection to stand. She would begin again, on her own terms. She had cried, in private, the way people cry when they grieve not just a marriage, but the version of themselves they had folded away to fit inside it. And then she had unfolded.
If you stayed until the end, it's because this story stayed with you. What you heard here is just a fragment. The full experience lives in 30 complete audio stories, carefully told with every emotion, every secret, and every moment that couldn't be shared on YouTube. There are no ads, no interruptions, and you can listen anytime, anywhere, in total privacy. Scan the QR code on your screen now, or tap the link in the pinned comment, and discover what was never said.
The morning she left the estate, Halmoni Bakrai met her at the door. The old woman held out a small jade piece, a Yun family heirloom, worn smooth by decades of handling. "This is not tradition," Halmoni said quietly. "This is mine to give, and I give it to you, because you carried this family with grace when you did not have to. That is not forgotten." Sarah held the jade piece in her palm. Her throat moved. "Thank you, Halmoni," she said. They stood together for a moment. 2 women who had been placed, by circumstance, on opposite sides of a man's secret, and had found, in the wreckage of it, a respect that had nothing to do with him. Then Sarah walked to her waiting car. She did not look back. Halmoni Bakrai watched until the car disappeared down the same road that had taken Kang Wu away from his marriage one morning, with a suitcase and a lie of omission. She breathed slowly, then returned inside. Zuri did not move into the estate. That was her choice, stated clearly without apology, at the beginning of the new arrangement. She would raise Jiwon in her own home. She would bring him to the estate regularly, for family days, for meals, for the particular education that only Halmoni Bok Rai could provide, and that Zuri, whatever her reservations about the Yun world, recognized as something her son needed. Kang Wu saw his son 3 times a week, sometimes more. He arrived with the particular seriousness of a man who has understood, late but not too late, that presence is not the same as proximity, that being in a room with someone and truly being there for them are entirely different things. He was learning. He was, in his slow and imperfect way, becoming the father the child needed. Not the managed, strategic version of fatherhood he might have offered if the letter had never fallen from Zuri's bag, but the real one. The one built on accountability, rather than design. Halmoni Bok Rai watched all of it with the patience of someone who understands that growth does not move on a schedule. She watched Kang Wu hold Jiwon in the garden one Sunday afternoon. The boy now curious and alert, 6 months old, reaching for the light through the leaves, and she felt something ease inside herself, something that had been held very tightly for a very long time. She sat in her garden chair and thought about her late husband, about her late son, about the long chain of men in this family who had carried both greatness and weakness in the same hands. She thought, perhaps this one will carry it differently. Not perfectly. She had no illusions about perfection, but differently, with more honesty. With a son who would grow up watching his father choose truth over convenience, which is perhaps the most important inheritance any father can leave. She closed her eyes and let the afternoon sun find her face. The garden around her was exactly as it had always been, and also entirely changed. A lineage does not ask to be continued. It simply continues, through the ones brave enough to carry it forward, and the ones wise enough to know what must be released. Jiwon Yun would grow up knowing his father's name, knowing his grandmother's voice, knowing the weight of a tradition that had made room for him, not without difficulty, but with the only thing that matters in the end: intention. And somewhere in Accra, Zuri's mother received a photograph in the mail. A small boy with wide dark eyes and a last name that crossed 2 worlds. She held the photograph for a long time. She did not know the full story yet, but she knew her daughter, and she knew that her daughter had not arrived anywhere by accident. She placed the photograph on the mantel and waited, the way mothers wait, for the next chapter to arrive. Comment: bait ending, high engagement. A secret held too long does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes a letter on a kitchen table. A child with a name the world was not supposed to know yet. A grandmother who chooses truth over comfort, even when the truth is inconvenient for everyone she loves. Sarah walked away with her dignity intact because she refused to become smaller than the situation required. Zuri stayed, not for love, not for a family name, but for a boy who deserved a full world. And Kang Wu, a man who had everything, had to lose the shape of it before he could understand what any of it was actually for. So tell me, if you were Sarah, would you have left with grace? Or would you have made the truth louder before walking out that door? And is a man who acknowledges his son 6 weeks late truly a man who has learned, or simply a man who was caught? But there is one thing the letter did not contain. One name Zuri had never spoken aloud. Not to Kang Wu, not to Halmoni Bok Rai, not to anyone in the Yun world. A name from Accra. A man who had known Zuri long before Seoul, long before Yun International, long before Jiwon. A man who had also been waiting, and who had just, very quietly, booked a flight to Korea. Some stories close one door completely, only to reveal there was always another door, one that was never locked, only unnoticed.